Hello, this is a presentation about using the management system standards for IT asset management and information security management together. This is not an overview for either standard, but rather focuses on some detailed issues. There is a separate overview presentation on the ITAM standard, which is available on the Emashare website. My name is David Bickett, and I was one of the co-editors of the new ITAM standard. These are the contents of the presentation. Several of the topics here concern general principles or observations about the overlap between ITAM and Information Security Management, or InfoSec, and their respective standards. Some of these points also relate to detailed contents of the standards. Unfortunately, Information Security Management and ITAM often operate too much in silos in many or most organizations. This should not be the case. I'm going to mention just 3 points on here which demonstrate this. Number one, the general principle which we know in ITAM certainly applies within security management, that you can't manage what you don't know. Both of these disciplines require complete and accurate knowledge of assets. Second point I'd mention is that there's something called the critical security controls, sometimes also called the CIS controls for the Center for Internet Security controls. And the top 2 prioritized controls are hardware and software inventories. So they are clearly recognized as critical. The 2 most critical controls, arguably, for ITAM are also the 2 most critical controls for security management. Likewise, if you start looking at national frameworks, such as the U.S. Cybersecurity Framework, published by NIST, asset management is the first requirement of that framework core. So, in principle, they absolutely belong together, but we don't see that happening very often. Let's dive in. There are 3 major ways in which the ITAM standard has copied from the InfoSec standard as listed here. We're going to look at each one of these areas individually. The first one of these is risk management. ISO ITAM did not use the risk management approach from ISO 55001, but rather took it from 27001, which was a much more rigorous approach. Both of them have sub-processes, sub-clauses dealing with risk assessment and risk treatment, and the slide shows the specific references for the 2 clauses, sub-clauses within the respective standards. The second area of overlap concerns the selection of objectives from an annex. Not so much overlap, but copying. In 27001, they select control objectives and the related controls from a normative Annex A. What they do there is they actually select by elimination. They're expected to include everything unless they're going to exclude something, but they still have to determine which control objectives are going to be included, and that has to be documented. In 19770-1, you likewise have a normative Annex A with all of those objectives in it, but you select by addition. You add the things that you want to have covered by your management system standard. The tiers are predefined groupings of those process objectives as defined in Annex B. We've talked about that in a different presentation on the ITAM standard overall. Tier 1 being trustworthy data, that's always included in the base text. Tier 2 is the life cycles, and Tier 3 is we call optimization, which is remaining functional processes. But the way these are incorporated in the standard is largely the same as it is for 27001. Although in one case they're controls dealing with risks, in the other they're processes dealing with the areas that we have to cover. The third area that I want to look at is that of assessment documentation. Now, every management system standard requires a statement of scope. There's nothing unusual about that. However, 27001 and the ITAM standard, ISO ITAM standard, both require a statement of applicability, which is something additional. What I'm going to run through here is the actual text from this clause in the ITAM standard. Potentially this is a bit of reading, but nonetheless I think it's really important to grasp this because this is one of the most important aspects of the standard. Okay, the organization shall, it's required, shall determine the objectives which are appropriate for the operation processes identified in 621. That's the previous one. The objectives determined in this way shall be compared with those in Annex A. Okay, then a statement of applicability shall be produced, which lists those objectives with the justification for inclusion and exclusion of any listed in Annex A. Okay, note 1, Annex A is not exhaustive. You may have others that you want to add. Note 2, the term statement of applicability has been chosen because of its analogy with the same thing in 27001. You need the statement of applicability together with the scope definition by any internal or external party to understand what is covered by the IT asset management system. And 3, you're not required to use those categories of tiers 1, 2, and 3, but nonetheless those are suggested. In addition to that, we've added explicit linkages into ISO ITAM to highlight the need to coordinate with information security management and with service management. You can see what we've done in Clause 4 there. We had a note that stakeholders include the people responsible for those other systems, such as information security management and service management. And in Clause 5.2, we've also stated that your IT asset management policy has to be consistent with the strategic plans and also relevant policies of any other management systems used by the organization. Those are intended to really lock you in to ensuring that you coordinate and integrate as much as possible with other management systems within your organization. Now, what we've been talking about there is ways of driving effective integration. I'd just like to make a few comments about this whole idea of greater integration. The ITIL SAM and ITAM guide goes into this in some more detail. Obviously, if you can actually integrate your management systems, that's one very effective way of driving better integration. Another set of ways that we've found to improve integration from pragmatic observation is that if you have common membership of key committees such as the Change Management Board, that helps very significantly drive integration between the two areas. You can have high-level corporate policies or organizational policies which cover both areas so that you don't have separate ones, purely separate ones for security and for IT asset management. You may have more detailed ones further down which are separate, but at least the top level ones should be combined, and that will help your integration. Common reporting lines, it's not common, but it is starting to happen, and where you find that both security management and IT asset management are reporting to the same people, you get obviously much better integration. You also have tools which can help drive that. However, tools are not nearly as successful at that as we'd like them to be. This next slide shows some of the issues there. The tools are starting to converge, but by all means, not there yet. There are significant differences in what the different disciplines are looking for from their tools. Information security management has to have immediate availability of information to stop things going live or executing or being attached to the system which are not authorized, whereas ITAM tends to be used for just periodic license compliance. It shouldn't be, but it often is. Coverage, likewise, for information security management, you need to know if, for example, for whitelisting and blacklisting, what software is allowed on your systems in general, but you don't have to know about every specific instance. But for ITAM, you generally need to know about every specific instance. And also, you may not be concerned about certain things which are not licensable in ITAM, whereas for information security management, you are. And it's often the things that are not licensable that present your greatest exposures. In terms of authorization focus, it's critical for information security management. In ITAM, that's generally weak. So we've got a way to go there, but things are slowly improving. We've been talking so far mostly about the overlap between the management system standards for ITAM and information security management. There's more. The most important one to mention is the 19770-2 standard. That's for something called the software identification tag, often referred to as the SWID tag. The first edition of that back in 2009 was something that we thought was very important for ourselves, but what happened was that the security community saw it and realized that it was something that they could actually use very well. They were having trouble identifying software. They were having trouble linking to national vulnerability databases and things like that. So as a result, the standard was revised in 2015, and it now very explicitly is designed to facilitate security automation. It's mandatory according to the U.S. Department of Defense IT Standards Registry. It's supported by NIST, Trusted Computing Group, and so forth. There's an organization called tagvault.org, which is one of the main drivers for that. And if you want to learn more about that, I suggest very strongly that you go there. One other area of observations I'd like to mention. This may be of interest to people concerned about this area, and it's the issue of information in general and its control. Information security management is concerned with the management of information security, not the management of information per se. IT asset management is concerned with the management of IT assets, and that includes the management of information about IT assets. However, neither one of these standards explains how to manage information overall. Interestingly, 27001 requires an inventory of information, but that's all. There's a hole here. We're looking for organizations which would be willing to be early adopters of joint implementations of 27001 and the ISO ITAM standard. So if you're in that position, considering that, or wanting to work on something like that, please contact us. We'd really much like to pursue that. In terms of resources, the critical security controls are things that are definitely worth looking up. If you go to the SANS website, which was the organization that started them, they'll give you quite a bit of information and give you a link also to the CIS website where the most current information is. Likewise, my own website has got this presentation and video, some information about the standard itself, the ISO ITAM standard, and some information about the ITIL SAM ITAM guide, plus contact information if you want to follow up. I hope this has been useful. If you have any comments or questions, I'd be very interested in hearing from you. You can find out how to contact me on my website. Thank you very much.